Okay, so in this tutorial, we're just going to look at cutting out a custom image. So just looking through the ones that we've got so far, I think something like this is a good example. And something I wanted to do before we just edit it is just maybe change the image a little bit to give it the appearance of one that a customer might send. So it might be that the lighting isn't that good, the contrast is a little bit off. So there may be scenarios where before we cut it out, like we've done, we'll have to adjust the levels of the image, similar to how we do on the crystals. So that's sort of an extra step. So I'm just going to pause the video, edit this image, and just come back to it in a second. Okay, so let's say, for example, that this image here is what the customer has sent over to us. So if you look at the background, that looks relatively okay, and backgrounds like this will be a little bit easier to cut out, because it's mainly white or solid color, or there isn't much in focus around the person. So images like this will be easier to cut out. But where the background is more in focus, and let's say, for example, that the client is standing in front of a plant or bookcase or something like that, it would take a few more steps to cut them out. Photoshop wouldn't be that good at detecting all the edges. But we'll just use this one for now, and I can show you another example. So like I mentioned, so we've got a few things that now with these photos that they send, on one hand you have to honor what they send, meaning that you don't want to change it too much, but let's say, for example, that the customer sent it and they specifically said, I've got the only image I have of my loved one is this, can you see what you can do to just adjust it and make it the best it can be? So looking at this, there is some shadowing on the image, the skin tones are a little bit dark, and the lighting is sort of a little bit too much. So the first thing you want to do in this instance is we want to adjust the levels of the image. So a way to do that, and a technique to do that to enable us to be able to alter it if we need to, is by using what's called an adjustment layer. So before we do that though, so let's say we've got this image here, we've opened it up. I'll just do that again from the start. So we've got a customer example here. So I'll just open that in Photoshop. And usually by default, whenever you open up an image in Photoshop, it's going to have a little lock icon here, which means that you're not going to be able to edit it or change it. So the first thing you need to do there is just click the lock, and then that layer will be editable then. So the first thing we need to do is, because we are sending this to print, it's got to be converted into that correct color space. So the first thing we need to do is double check that the image is definitely in that color space. So a way that you can do that is come up to here where it says image and come down to mode. Excuse me. So image, mode, and then you see where it says RGB. So that's currently on screen, which means that this image is optimized for use on websites or email or anything that's on a computer screen, basically. So what we want is we want it to be on CMYK. So all we need to do is just click that button there, and it will say to us that we're converting it to a different profile. So we can press OK on that, because that's okay. The second step I like to do is just follow the instructions there of what it said. So you need to come up to here, up to edit, and you come all the way down, and you see where it says convert to profile, not color profile, sorry, convert to profile. So once we click that, you'll see it says destination space, and it says profile working RGB there. So what I like to do is just come down to the one I tend to use is just working CMYK. That one right, it should be right at the top, but sometimes it puts it down the bottom. So that's the one I tend to use. So CMYK. You can leave everything else as it is. You don't need to. You don't need to worry about that. I've never really changed that myself, so that's okay. So now that's good to go to edit that and cut it out. So, like I mentioned, we've got the levels right on this image. So a way that we can do that is we come up to here where it says layer, and what we're going to do is apply what's called an adjustment layer. So what that means is that it's a layer on top of this layer. So you can think of it a little bit like a clipping mask, like in the previous tutorial. So it's a layer that won't affect the original. Well, it will affect the original, but because it's on its own layer, we can make changes to that and adjust it where we need to and come back to it. So what it means is it's non-destructive. So you can change that however many times you want without the image being flattened. So what we'll do is we'll come down to new adjustment layer and come down to levels here. That's the one I tend to use. You can rename it if you want to, but I'll just keep it as levels because I know that's the effect that it is. And again, just like most of the effects in Photoshop on the tabs, if you click it and you can't see this menu, it could be that the layers panel there is like covering it up. So you can just click that tab, move it around, and you should be able to see it. But just like that, because I've collapsed it, you can't quite see it. So one way you can get it back is just double click that button there, and you see it just appears behind it. So looking at our levels then here, so we've got two sliders really. I tend to use the top one, whereas the bottom one, it does a bit more of a harsh effect overall, whereas the top one here, it gives you a bit more control over the mids, which I think is a bit more important. So on this side, we've got the dark tones. On the right side, we've got the light tones. So you see as I'm bringing it to the left. So all I'm doing is just clicking on the arrow with the mouse and just dragging towards me. Or you can go into the box there. So where it says T55, you can just put wherever you want. And then you can see there, it's put it all the way to 30. So I just tend to drag it, but yeah, you can type it in if you find that a bit easier. So just looking at it, and one way you can check if you're not sure is just adjust the levels one by one. So I'd say that looking at this, the dark tones, we don't really need to make them any darker, and we can't push them any lighter currently. The lighter tones we may want to edit a little bit, but it's more the mid-tones there that we want to worry about. So all we need to do is just click that middle one, just drag it along slightly, and you'll see as I'm doing that, it's slightly affecting the mid-tones there. So we want to get it to roughly where we think looks most natural. So I would say probably about there. And sometimes with the mid-tones, it does excuse me, it does strip away. It does strip away some of the contrast. So what we can do is you can either try and just put a little bit of the darker tones back in like that, but because this is primarily a darker image, I'd probably just put an extra brightness and contrast effect on top of this just to make sure. So let's say, for example, we were happy with that. So as you can see on our layers palette now, we've got our levels layer and our original layer there. So like we did before, you can switch that layer off just to see how much difference you made to it, like that. So you can see it's taken away some of the contrast. You can see in the hair and the outside. So like I mentioned, one thing we can do, so before we do that, if you did want to edit it, like I said, you can, because this menu is still editable, so we can still change that if you wanted to. So you could go back in and tweak it a little bit more if you wanted to. And anytime you want to go back a step in Photoshop, so let's say, for example, you put this too high, and then you couldn't remember whereabouts that you had it. If you just press Control Z, or you come up to here, edit, undo. So that will just undo. So edit, undo at the top here. That will undo any step that you've just made. It will undo that. And a really great way that you can get to multiple levels, multiple steps in the document that you've been working on is come up to Window up here. And if you click the History palette there, so you'll open up a separate tab here. So, and again, you can just click that and drag it away from the tab there. And what this is all the steps that we've basically done in this document. So this is great, meaning that you can click back to whatever step that you want to. So you might want to click halfway through the document when we started, or you might want to go back to the start where we were checking the levels, checking the color space. You can do whatever, and that's a good thing to just have tabbed out in your document as you're working. So I'll just drag that over to the right. So all I'm doing there is just clicking the top of the window, top of the tab, and just dragging it. And when I drag it over here, you see it turns blue. And all I need to do then is just click and release, and you see it puts the tab in there, so we can get back to that anytime we want just by clicking on it. So yeah, so now that we've adjusted the levels, we've got to put an extra step of a little bit more of a brightness and contrast on top of that. So again, we're going to use a brightness and contrast adjustment layer. So again, adjustment layer is a separate layer with its own effect on it, meaning you can change it. So we're going to come up to here, up to layer. I'm going to come down to new adjustment layer, and you see where it says brightness and contrast. We're just going to click that one. And again, you can rename it, give it a color if you want it to be organized, but we don't need to at the moment. Just click OK. So what we can do, so again, if you don't see it, just drag the layers palette out because it might be behind it, so you can see it's behind there. So again, just a bit of trial and error. So you've got your brightness on one tab there, and you've got your contrast on your second. So the brightness is a little bit similar to the levels in that it's going to change the whole of the image. So you see as I drag that down, it's going to make it a little bit too dark for what we want. And if you put it back to 0 and you start to increase it, it's going to be a little bit too much. It's just a case of seeing what's going to, again, look best. So you can see increasing the contrast a little bit is going to bring us back some of that color that we lost in the original. So I'm going to put it, yeah, I'd say around, if we said, yeah, because that's too much when we start to go to above 60. If we were to put it to 20, or even let's say 15, we just change the brightness and just see how that affects it. Again, that's probably too bright going that way, so we could maybe drop the brightness ever so slightly to bring back some of that lighting that we've lost. So we could probably leave the brightness where it is on 0. So again, we need to check it against our original. So the way you could do that is just remove both of those layers one by one. So yeah, so I'd say that's quite an improvement from the original that they'd sent to us. So I think at this stage, before we begin cutting it out, it's probably best to send the customer this version of the image once we've edited the lighting, because we can edit it further once we've cut it out, but I think it's just a little bit easier, and it'll just save us some time rather than cutting it out and having to edit it later. It's better to be at the point where they've approved the image and all we need to do is cut it out and send them a final approve, rather than cutting it out, sending it to them. They might say, can you put back can you put some more of my hair back in, and then we might have to edit that again. It's just easier just to do things step by step. So I think at this stage, once we've edited the photo, we'd send them an actual JPEG or PDF proof of the image that we've edited. And I'll just show you how to do that. So this image that they've sent, so we can see, so in your file explorer here, so what I'll do is I'll just grab this link to the video and if I link to the file, and so let's say that, so this was the original image, so let's say that this is what they sent. So we can see what the file size is in the image by right clicking and come down to properties. So this is 12.9 megabytes. It's a little bit unlikely that the customer would send an image that's that high resolution, but you never know. So like we've discussed, that would be a little bit too large to send by email. So what we need to do to send the client a proof is to just downscale that image so that it's small enough to send. So depending on what we're sending the client, so if it's the full artwork, so with all the text and all of the artwork in place, like all the background, that a PDF would be best for that, because we're sending a whole piece of artwork. But when we're just sending a photo, we could get away with just sending a low resolution JPEG, just naming it low res in the file, so they know it's not the final file that's going to be used. So what we need to do to just downscale this photo is, if we come up to file at the top here, and if we come down to save for web, I think it is so come down to file and then export, and where it says save for web, if we click that one, that's going to bring us a menu up, and it might take a minute. It just has to optimize the image and everything. So you can see what it's giving us is the dimensions of the image and what quality it's currently on. So you can see it's currently 6,720 pixels wide by 4,480. And if you click this little button here, what that's going to allow us to do is optimize it to a certain file size that we want. So that's the way I like to do it, is I'll go to up here and go to optimize to file size. So if we were to put in, so that this is working in kilobytes, so 1 meg is 1,000 kilobytes. So if we were to put so we want no more than 300 kilobytes, I'd say, for a small image. So we can just type 300 in here and just press OK, and that's going to save it for us. Sorry, it's going to optimize it for us before we save it. So that little circle there with the dots around, meaning it's currently saving the image. So all it's done, so this is a bit of trial and error. So because the image is so large, all it's done is it's saved the image in slightly lower resolution, but it hasn't actually changed the physical size of the image, and that's what we want. But we don't really want to send them a massive file still. If I show you what it'd be like if they open this up in their web browser, for example, so if I press preview, this image is absolutely massive. So you can see there's no way that they'd be able to view that. So failing that, so that's the first step I do, just try that and just see if it affects the overall physical size. But because it doesn't, what we do, so I'll just press cancel on that. Oops, so I'll just come back to it. So file, export, save for web, because we tried the optimize for file size, and we know that doesn't work because it still kept the image in really high resolution. So the first step was clicking that button up here and coming down to optimize to file size. But because that didn't work, what we're going to do now is actually change the physical size of the image and the resolution is going to save, or the compression quality is going to save it in. So what it did before was it put it to the right to the very bottom, like the lowest compression that you can possibly get, which we don't want it to look too bad when they view it either. So I would tend to put it on high compression. So that's in the middle. So the next thing we want to do is, so we can probably safely put it to 1000 width, I'd say, and that's reducing it by 14, nearly 15%. So now when I press preview, that's more or less the size that they're going to see it when they open up their browser. You can see it has taken away some of the quality, but overall it's not too bad. And you see when you press preview, it tells you that there on the left hand side what the size is going to be. So it's 78 kilobytes, so that's not too bad. So I mean, we could up that resolution to a little bit more to put very high, and we'll just press preview again down there just to compare the two. It's changed it a little bit, so for the sake of this we could probably keep it on that setting. So yeah, let's say for example we're happy with that, so we've reduced the compression of it. You can leave everything else as it is. You could probably put the quality up to 100. Oh, maybe not actually. Yeah, just keep it on very high. I didn't realize the quality is affected by this. So yeah, just leave that as it is. Don't worry about the blur or the matte. Leave everything else as it is. So what we're going to do now is we're going to save this image to send to the customer. So just click save there. So we just call it whatever. Customer example. You probably want to put their name. It wouldn't have a stock code in there, but doing jobs by code or whatever naming convention we do, we'd probably put the client name and the date that we're sending it to them, just for good measure, and just so that we have all of our records up to date, so we know what proof we've sent and what date. It's just helpful to have some sort of naming convention, but we could save that now and send it off to the client. So let's say that the client came back to us and they said, yeah, we're happy. Yeah, please proceed with the final artwork. So what we'd do in that instance is we would come back into this file. What we do, just like I did in the previous video, we're going to group all this together and keep it so that we've got it in case we need it. And then we're going to just cut round this photo. So what we're going to do is just come down to this one down here, and we're just going to double click on the layer like that, and we're just going to go original like that. And what we're going to do is we're just going to right click on it. So you can either press Control J on the keyboard or just right click on the layer, and you're going to come down to duplicate layer. So we're going to call this one cutout. And then what we're going to do is we're going to hide the original layer. So we've only got our cutout layer there. So it's important just to make sure that you're selecting the right layer when we're doing this, because we don't want to try and do anything on these layers, because these are the effect layers. So one thing you can do, just to keep it a bit more organized if you feel you need to, is just put it into a group. So by having one selected, you can see it goes grey, and when I hover over the other one, I'm holding shift on the keyboard as I'm doing this. So as I hold that down, you can see it turns blue. So once I click again, I've got them both selected. So now when I click that new group button at the bottom there, it's going to put it into a group. And you see, just like in the last video, it's giving us an icon of that, meaning that you can see whatever's inside that group. So we'll just call that effect, just lighting effects or whatever, like that. And we can still hide that, switch it on and off if we need to. So we've got our effects in that layer, and we've got our cutout. So the next step now is to start cutting this out. So the best way to do it is to start with getting Photoshop to use AI to start to give us a starting point of that cutout. So this is a fairly complex image with a hair and the background. That section there, we might need to adjust it a little bit. In fact, I think I did on the actual one that we did for the artwork. Yes, yeah, we did. We extended her shoulders there. So that's one thing to consider when we're cutting these out, is do we need more of the body in? And at times I think it's good to just put that in, even if we don't need it. It's good to have it there. So I think because of how the angle has been taken, some of that shoulder, quite a lot of that shoulder is missing, and it could be that we may need that in the future if they said can you make the image smaller to fit the rectangle. We'd need parts of that image in there. So before we cut it out, in fact, I think it'd be better to just put that shoulder in. It's a lot harder to try and fill that in once we've cut out the photo. So what we're going to do is we're just going to use AI in Photoshop to just put in an extra part of our image in the shoulder there. So what we need to do is give Photoshop a little bit more room in the image to be able to work out where that shoulder part is. So what we're going to do is come down to this crop icon here. So you see, as I do that, the image changes then to like a rectangle around the outside with some icons you can see there. And what that means is you can drag it whichever way you want, up and down, left and right. I'll just undo that by pressing edit undo. All we want to do is just give a little bit more room at the bottom to allow for more of the shoulder to come into view there. So what we're going to do is just click that crop icon again, and if we just click and drag that middle button there, we'll just click it and drag it down to about there. You don't need to go too far down like that, and we'll just press done. So now we've got a little bit more space to work with. So what we're going to do next is we'll just move this tab out of the way, and what we're going to do is now we're going to select an area that we want Photoshop to fill in. So all we need to do is just press this button here. So that's the second one down from the top, and it's called the rectangular marquee tool. So what we're going to do there is just click and drag, and you see as I'm dragging, it's drawing a square. So we're just going to go all the way to the bottom and all the way across. So like that. So I can just release now. So I've clicked and I've dragged across the whole width of the document. And you'll see I've gone across the whole width because it's giving you a little pink line there. So what I'm going to do is just release that now. So release the mouse key. So now we've got a selection. And you see down there, we've got generative fill. So what that's going to do is it's going to use AI to fill in what it thinks should be there. So again, if I just click that, and we don't need to worry about being too descriptive because we want Photoshop to do that for us. So if you just click generate now, it's going to generate what it thinks her shoulder and her bottom half should look like underneath her shoulders there. Okay, so it's not done a bad job. So like before, it's going to give us 3 different options in there. So we can see we've got 3 options there because it's got a numbered 1 to 3. So that's the first one. We're going to click across to number 2, and finally number 3. And it's just a case of picking which one you think looks the best. I mean, you don't have to worry about too much because you're not going to see the whole of it. But if we have to base it on the fact that we might. So I would say this one probably looks, number 3 probably looks the best in terms of the way the fabric has been rendered, and the way the shirt's been sort of cropped down, because on this one you've got slight imperfections there in the blouse, like merging into the cardigan, which we don't really want to have to worry about fixing because it's too time consuming. That cardigan doesn't look quite right on that one, so I'd say this one is probably our best one. And again, what I do at this stage is just, you can keep that as it is, generative fill. So I like to just group everything and just keep everything editable if we need it. So what I do at this stage is just group our cutout and our generative fill together. What we're going to do is, now that we've extended this and we're happy with this as an image, we then cut it out. We then flatten it and then cut it out. So again, just to make sure that we've got the image all in one, just click one layer and the other like that. So I'm just clicking once on the layer, holding shift, going up to the second layer while holding shift and just clicking the second one. You can see they both turn grey. So now I can click that new group icon there, and we'll just call this extended edit, like that. So what we want to do now is just press Ctrl-J on the keyboard, and we've got our second copy of that. So what we want to do is flatten this group of layers now, because we've got our extended edit, and if we look inside the group, we've got the original cutout layer that we were going to do, and we've got our generative fill at the bottom. So because we haven't cut it out yet, we just want to make it a bit more easy to understand if we go and edit it at a later date. So we'll just call it original again, because we haven't cut this out yet. So we've got extended edit, and we'll just call this one, we'll just call this group extended flattened, so that we know we've taken this group of layers and we've just flattened it all together. And just to flatten it, all we need to do is just right click on the group like that, and we'll just come to merge group down the bottom here. And you can see when I do that, it turns into a flat layer. So the group icon disappears. So what that means is that it's now just a flat image. So you can't move the individual layers now, which is what we want. So now I've got our extended flattened layer. We're going to just duplicate that once more. And now we're going to call this one cut out. So this is the layer that we're now going to cut out. Okay. So the first thing we need to do is just select the right tool. So what we can do is just come down to the polygon lasso tool here, and we want to draw a rough outline of where we want Photoshop to cut around the image. So it's going to do a pretty good job, but it's not going to get it perfect. But we just want to get it, help us get started. So we can just click select subject, and it will automatically pick up the subject, but it does have mixed results depending on what the image is like and how complex it is. So on something like this, we probably want to give it a little bit of a guidance of where to cut out, especially around the hair. So with this tool selected, we just click on this one, and you see you've got a few different tools down here. So you've got the lasso tool, polygon lasso tool, and magnetic lasso tool. So each of these operate in a slightly different way. So I'll just show you what each of them do. So the standard lasso tool is a bit more free form, meaning that so if I just click and try and draw a straight line, you see it's a little bit hard to get a straight line. So this is good if you're just quickly grabbing something. So I could quickly click once and just draw around it like this. But as you see, it is a little bit difficult to get it exact. That's one way you could do it, but that's better if you've just got a section of an image that you're just quickly moving around or changing. I don't tend to use it that much. I'll show you the magnetic lasso tool. So this is good where something like that, where you have an edge that's quite well defined. So with this, it does allow you to click and pick up the edge of using the tool. So what that means is if I just click once and release, and if I just try and follow that line with my mouse now, you'll see it snapping to that edge pretty well. So this is good if you want to really fine tune an area. However, you do sometimes have to go back and readjust it. So you can go back and delete some of those points. So if I just press delete on the keypad, you'll see it's given me some points in again because I've deleted some that's just been put in. So that's another way you can do it, depending on what the image is like, but I don't tend to use it all that much. So we'll just not delete it, we'll just undo that again. So the one I tend to use in this one is the polygon lasso tool. So what it's going to do is allow us to draw quite a precise point around the image, but not too precise, because we want a guide, but we don't need to worry too much at this stage about getting an exact point for point cut out around all the shoulders and everything like that, because we can fix that later on. So with this one selected, so the polygon lasso tool, you just click once outside the artboard, and you can see wherever I move my mouse, it's doing a complete straight line. So the way you think of this is you think of some point A and point B. So we want to put lots of these points together. So what we can do is we'll end the point, let's say around there, near where a shoulder is. So if you just click once, and you'll see it's made a point there. And what we want to do then is just go around the image. It doesn't have to be neat necessarily, but it just needs to cover the whole round of the outside of the image. So you see all I'm doing is I'm clicking and then I'm dragging out this straight line to where I think it should stop. So a hair is about up there, so I'm just going to click there to stop. So I'm just going around the whole image like this. Yeah, I don't want to come in too far in case I chop any of the image out, but where we can, so I'm just clicking around all the image. There, all the way around. And it's important to join it up at the end. So you can see we started over there, so we want to cover all of that bottom image. So you can go outside of the artboard completely. So you see I'm clicking outside of the artboard, I'm just clicking all the way around like that, and you can press Control and plus on the keyboard to zoom in to see where the end of that point is. It doesn't matter too much if you miss where that point is, because you see as I double click, you'll see it will join it up for us anyway. So if we zoom out again, I'll just press Control Z again, because I think, there we go. So that's the start of our cutout. So what we're going to do is we're going to come up to select and mask up here now. Because we've got our cutout, if I come up to select and mask at the top there, so just take it a minute to pick up the image. So you'll see we've got a select subject icon up here now. So because we've given it a bit of a guide, that now should give us a bit more of an accurate cutout. So if I press select subject now, so it will say this will discard your current selection. Do you want to continue? And that's fine because we can put in other parts of the image and delete them later on. So we'll just press OK on that. And it's going to try and do a better version of what we've just done. So we'll just give it a minute to calculate it. So that's what it's done. And a way that we can check if it's missed any areas that are crucial, like, you know, some of the hair or something that doesn't quite look right, is if we just, so by default, it should be on this, on this overlay here. You can change it to a different setting if you wanted to. You can have it on black or black and white, on a layer if you wanted to. I mean, you could do it on black. So you could, so this is a fairly good one if you have it on black, so you can see you can start to see where maybe missed some of the hair. So if I'm dragging this opacity slider there, you can see it's missed some of that hair at the top, but that's okay because there is a refine hair button there that should pick up most of that, and we can edit that back in. So we know we need to do the hair, so that's okay. And if we just keep scrolling down the image, scrolling a little bit more, and we'll just check the sides of her head, like here and here, go up and down and just see what it's picked up. So you can see it's got most of her hair in there, so that looks okay to me. I'll just scroll down, carry on going, and you can see these edges are always tricky. So you can see that in the cutout that we had, the AI that's added in, it's added in a bit of fur in there. So we want to just neaten that up as well when we come to do the final image, but that's okay. That will be easy enough to neaten that up. And again, maybe a little bit at the sides there, because it's a little bit too bumpy in places. We can neaten that up. So we know that we've got the hair to edit. Most of the cutout's okay. There's just a little bit at the bottom to neaten up in terms of the shoulder on that side and the bumps in the cardigan on that side. So we just press the refine hair button now. That's going to neaten up the hair a little bit better. So as you can see, if I go up and down on the slider again, it's pretty much got it bang on. So it's just a little bit of the hair at the top there that we want to lift back in if we can. So it's just that top bit there. So what we want to do is we want to put back in some parts of the image for this cutout that we then will edit down and edit some of it out. So a way to do that is if I just swap it back over to red overlay. So we want to get some of that bit in and some of that bit around there. So one way we'll do that is we'll use what's called a refine edge tool. So these are similar to the brushes in Photoshop. So if you click one of these and you can't see it, you can just use the size button here. So see if I increase it like that, the size of the brush will increase. So I'll just show you the difference of what these two brushes do. So this is just the normal brush tool. So you can change the hardness of this. So by default, so if I put this to like 100 so you can see, because this is on the plus icon at the moment, this is going to put in a big chunk back in of the original image it's going to take away some of the cutout that we had. So you can see there, again, if I press Control Z, press refine hair again, so I think I went one step too far back. Yeah. So that was taking out a massive chunk, which is not really what we want. That will be fine when we're coming to smooth out those edges down there. But for the hair, because it's such fine detail, we can't really, it would take us a long time to do all those individual hairs. It's not the best technique. So for this one, we'd use the refine edge tool. So for this one, we would select that and we'll get a brush size that we think is going to fit. So again, you can adjust it by doing the size here, or you can press the left and right square brackets on your keyboard, which is what I do, to just increase the size of that. So you want it about there would be fine. We want it enough that it's going to put back in someone's head. We don't want it too small that we're going to take ages to do it, and we don't want it too large because it's going to put back in parts of the image that we don't want. And when we're doing hair, we want to put the hardness all the way down to 0 because we don't want. So I'll show you what happens if I put it to 100% hardness. So if I click now, it's going to put in parts of that image really harshly around the edges, which is not what we want. So, excuse me, with hardness all the way down to 0, and if we just drop down our mask there, so it's around there that we want. So if we press view zoom in or Control plus on the keyboard, we just zoom in a little bit further. You can see right where we want to put the image back in. Just all around here. So with hair, it's really, really difficult. It's never really going to be 100% perfect, but we can get it as close as we can. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw in, just click once like that and release it. I'm just going to bring that back up and just see if it made any difference, which it doesn't look like it does. So we'll just try that again. And it didn't really bring up any more hair. So what we want to do is just switch to the minus. So what that should do is that will erase parts of our cutout. And by doing that, it's going to reveal parts of the image in the original, which is what we want, because we want some more of that hair back in there. So if I drag that slider back down again, so that red area, that indicates areas of our mask. So because we want to delete parts of that to bring in parts of this hair, that's what we want. So I hope that makes sense. It took me a little bit of time to figure that out, but once you do it, you'll see visually what the difference is. So yeah, so we've got it on our minus now. We've got our refine edge tool, and what we're going to do is just click around that area. Again, it didn't quite work how we wanted, so we'll just press Control Z to go back a step. And like I said, this is where it is a little bit tricky, because we want to get as much of the hair in there as we can. We don't want to put in too much in. So if I just do a much broader selection like that, it should hopefully put in a little bit more. But again, because it hasn't, what we'll do is we will manually put back in that hair at the top, and we'll have to just manually put that back in because this tool isn't quite doing what we want to with this image. So with the plus one selected, so we're not using a refine edge tool anymore because that didn't quite give us the results that we want. So we're just going to use the normal brush tool there, and again just keeping it on the low hardness. So bringing the slider down so we can see it's picked up around that side mostly. So it's just really that top half. So what we're going to do is just come down to about there. Oh, we want the plus selected, sorry, not the minus. Yeah, we want the plus because we want to put back in parts of the image. So we just click once and just draw that back in like that. You see it's giving us parts of the image back in there. So that's what we want. So we're going to come back to that. So that's fine. And that hair is edited. So if we scroll right down to the bottom now, excuse me. Oh, just press Control Z because I've accidentally put in some brush down there. That's one thing to watch out for is when you're clicking around and zooming, just make sure you haven't deleted or in parts of the image that you didn't mean to. So you can just zoom out by pressing Control plus on the keyboard to make sure you didn't put anything in there, but that looks okay. Cutout, I think, because it is so wonky, the best thing for us to do would be to draw more of a straighter line back in there, and then we can come and correct that again like we've just done with the hair. So what we're going to do is just get that brush again. So we want to we want a much smaller brush this time, so you can see where it's starting to sort of push it out. So what we're going to do is just click like that. So we'll just click and draw back in. So all I'm doing is just drawing a little line all the way across like that. I'm just going along the edge and just filling that line back in like that. I'm just pressing space on the keyboard and just clicking to sort of pan around where I'm drawing it back in. I'm just going like that along the whole line like that. So you can see there it's a little bit tricky along that line, but that's okay. With detail like that, we can get away with a much softer outline, because there's no way we'd be able to make that look 100% crisp. So by the time we can get away with a softer brush on the outline, and I'll show you what I mean by that in a second. So I'm just correcting all that line down there. As you can see, you're just trying to follow the natural line that was there. So I've just got the plus icon selected. I'm just using the normal brush tool to put parts of that image back in, and clicking the space bar just to pan down the image like that. Okay, so that's that side done. Now if I zoom out, excuse me, that side's pretty much done. You can just double check there as well. So we'll just go to the scroll bar and scroll along, or you can just use that. I mean, that looks okay, but we can delete that and the final cutout. That's not a problem. So again, come to the other side. Again, it's not looking too bad on this side, actually. There's a few little minor bumps, but overall, it's not looking too bad. Just plug it in my laptop charger before it runs out of battery. There we go. Right, yeah, you can see this side actually isn't too bad. So we could start it from sort of here. On this side, because it's not so bad, what we could do is just draw in parts of the image again, but not worry too much about recorrecting it afterwards, because it's not looking too bad. We'll try our best to sort of match the smoothness of the edges on this side. So you'll see if I draw it back in now, I'd say that looks a little bit too light brushed in comparison to the original. So if I press Control Z, so we want to try and match the hardness of that edge here. So a way that we do that is we come up to hardness, and if we put it to sort of, yeah, like maybe 40%, you can just type in 40, or you can drag it on the, I haven't really changed the spacing much. I don't really know what the use for that is. I'm sure there is one, but I'll just leave that as it is. So you see now, if I draw in a section, that's looking a little bit better. So that's almost pretty much bang on what we want. So what we'll try and do is, if we just zoom in a bit more again. So that section there is looking a little bit bumpy. So we can just really slowly just draw in that image back in like that. That will just help us to smooth off those little edges there. So you can see I'm just really doing it really, really slowly. And you can delete them as well. So you can see there's a tiny little bump that we don't want. So if we press the minus now and we just make the brush a little bit smaller, just click and just brush in, you can see it's now deleted that little knobble that we had there. So we can fine tune it that way. So yeah, just a case of going around it all. That looks all right to me. I mean, you can maybe needle it up a bit if you want. There is a point of obsessing and too much and doing too little details that probably the customer wouldn't see. And sometimes when you edit the cutout, it might be like there, it almost looks worse, and it's going to be more work to then correct all of that. So you can just press Control Z a couple of times to just leave it maybe back where it was, and you can always come back to it later on, but it's just about getting most of it as correct as you can. So because I'm still on the minus now, I can delete areas. So that looks okay. That looks all right so far. There, and there. Probably want to add in those bumps. So I'm going to switch back to the plus icon. So again, the hardness is about 40% because that will match that line there. So I'm just going to slowly just brush in, click and drag, and sort of use your mouse as like a brush to just put that part of the image back in. You can see it's really, really little, and it takes a lot of concentration to get it to look how you want and follow that line. But once you get the hang of it, so there, you can see there's a few little bumps, so we can smooth those out. So I'm going to switch to the minus icon now, and I'll come down here, and I'm just going to brush that out. So I'm just making those bumps a bit of a smoother line, just ever so slowly, like that, because they're all smoothed out now. It does hurt your eyes a little bit, but like I say, you can swap it to a different color, but I tend to find red just works for me because I can see the contrast in the edges. So that's looking okay. It's just that bit down there. So that's taking out that little bump. Down there, we could probably just take that edge off there. Down here, it's not looking too bad. Just carry on going. Down, down, down. Yeah, that's looking all right. Not too bad. We're coming right down to the bottom. So that part looks okay. So we've got the hair to do. We've done that side of the image. That side we need to touch up. Maybe a little bit of the hair down there. But overall, that's looking a bit better. So what we want now is, because this is the start of our cutout, or pretty much all of it, with the edits that we've got, we want to just put this now onto a separate layer. Excuse me. So the way that we do that, so to come out of this cutout menu and just get back to the original Photoshop menu, so you can see at the bottom, now there are some other options that you can play around with, and sometimes I find it easier to do it myself manually because you can fine tune that selection really well. Sometimes it's worth just playing around with these options just to see how it affects the cutout. So I don't really use it, like I say, but it's worth just trying it just to see how it. So you see what happens to the smooth if I increase that. So that fairly sharp edge we've got there, if I drag the smooth all the way up now, you'll see it's just starting to smooth it out gradually, and the feather that would make it more blurred, which is not what we want. The contrast, that's like the sharpness of it, which, because we've got two different types of cutouts on this image. So on the left side we've got more of a rough, and on the right we've got a bit less. The contrast doesn't seem to work so well for that either. The shift edge, what that does is it goes from one edge of the cutout to the inside of the image. So I'll show you what that does. So if I press shift edge like that now, it's going to move the cutout ever so slightly from one way to the other. So you can see if I put it all the way down, it's actually moving the cutout, and if to the more of the inside of it, and if I do it to the other way, it's going right the other way. But that's not, like I say, and it's worth just seeing what they do, but I don't really tend to use them. But because we've got that image now where we want, pretty much, we'll come down to here where it's to output, and if what we want is we want a new layer with a layer mask, and we want a layer mask because we're taking this image as it is. So if I zoom out, we're taking this cutout as we've got it there. So we put back in parts of our image. You can see there, that's what I mentioned about you can accidentally take things out that you didn't mean to. So you can see we've deleted some parts of our hair. So a way to get that back in, just grab our brush tool again, and put it around there. If you can't see the tool, I think it's one of these ones, caps lock. Yeah, so if you can't see the brush, you just press caps lock, on the keyboard, it'll bring it back. So if we just press the plus icon there, we want to bring back parts of our hair there. So we're just bringing back parts of our hair. That's that one. So that's all back in. Yeah. So you want to take all this image like we've got it. We want to keep all of that image that we've got there, all of that down there, and we want to still remove some of it in our next layer. So we want to go down to output, new layer with layer mask, and just press OK. Now you can see what we've got there is we've got our image pretty much 90% cut out, minus those bits that I mentioned a second ago. So what I do at this stage is, so we've got cut out, and then we've got I'll just put like cut out stage 1. I'll just duplicate that again. So right, Control J on the keyboard, or right click and then just duplicate layer, which is down here somewhere. Duplicate layer, yeah, just the top there. So I'll just put cut out stage 2 now. So we want to get rid of cut out stage 1, and what I tend to do is just make a new layer. So click down there to where it says new layer, click that once, and I'm just going to fill that with a color like we just had. So I've just put like a, I don't know, something bright like green or something, and just press the paint bucket icon there, click once into the space, and you'll see it fills that whole layer now with green, so you can see the whole cutout of what we've got. And a good thing to do is just save it as we're going along. So we're just going to put customer example, save that, and that's fine. So we've got this Photoshop file now saved. Yeah, so I think because the hair is so tricky, we'll tackle this bit first. So the easiest way to sort of do it is use a different brush. This is a technique that I found I think it was last month. I found someone on YouTube that one of those techniques that you think, why didn't I think of doing that to start with? But it's such a great technique. So I'll just try and explain this a bit better. So the brush that we've got that we're deleting with is round. So that's okay when we've got edges like that where you can just smooth round it and it's not too complex a shape. But because the hair has lots of intricacies and it's not all one solid shape, what we want is, once we change the brush, it's going to give us more of a better realistic look, and meaning that it's going to look more like hair. So in Photoshop there are some set brushes that we've got here. So we've got general brushes, and if we scroll down you'll see they're all pretty much the same style, just the rounds. We've got like arrays of brushes, which is not quite what we want. The brushes that we want, so I'm just clicking up here, there's the arrow, so I've got the brush tool selected and I'll come up here, and I'll send you this brush pack. What we want is we want some brushes that are going to be more hair-like brushes. So this is the set that we want. So brushes by Aragon Griffin Art. So the ones that I've used to have the best results, you can see you've got cloud brushes, smoke, skin, pores. So the ones that work quite well are brushed hair. That seems to work quite well. So if we just try with this one, so you can see there's lots and lots in this pack which are really, really great brushes. But if we start with brushed hair, just see what difference this makes when we do this brush. I'm just going to plug my phone in a second. Yeah, so I've got brushed hair. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw this on in fact, no, I'll just draw it straight onto the artwork so you can see. So again, once you've got that artwork that brush selected, you see it gives us a different brush shape entirely. So it may look a little bit odd to start with, but when we start to draw in different directions and get a different effect, you'll see what I mean. So if you remember back to, I don't think we did, yeah, I think we did do masks in the previous, maybe didn't. No, we did, sorry, yeah, we did. So if you remember the clipping mask, the way that it works is it's blocking out a window. So before in the photographic prints, what we had a solid shape of our clipping mask, so as in the circle rectangle, encapsulating everything within that shape. So with this one, so you can see our clipping mask is the shape of the person. So that means that we've cut out that shape of the person in the clipping mask. So that's what it means. So we've made our own shape essentially, and what we can do is add more to that shape, meaning that we're going to brush away parts of this image that we don't want. So if I get this brush nice and small and I just click and drag like that, you'll see it gives us a nice effect, but it's not quite what we want. So at the moment it's on brushed hair. So you could, another one that I think would work quite well was, which brush was it? It might have been, I think it could have been this one. Let's try this one. Yeah, so that's looking a little bit better. So if I make that really small, see, that's sort of working a little bit better. But it's more the hardness of it. It's quite a hard brush, isn't it? So if you drop the opacity there, you can see where I had it before is on 100%. It looks a little bit too harsh. So one thing you can do is drop it all the way down and just start to just fill in those areas bit by bit all the way around. So it is really, really time consuming. It's just a case of trial and error to get the right brush strokes that we want. So we'll just go around it like that. So that's one way we can do it. And you might think that brush maybe isn't what we want either, so we can just try another brush. So we've got hairbrush here. If I make that a bit larger, and some of the brushes, they don't have any, there's no control over the hardness, unfortunately. So you see this one, when I draw it in, it's going to give us quite a hard edge again. And again, it's not quite what we want because it's quite long in how it's applied. So it's one of those things where it's a lot of trial and error to get to where you want to sort of get the shape that you want with the brush. So yeah, the best brush I think to use would be one of these hair brushes. So dust there, it's just like just a case of just trying out I think one of the best ones we've got is probably the brushed hair, because I think that gives us more of the effect that we want. And so if we just drop the opacity all the way down, we'll just keep drawing this out until we get it to a point that we're sort of happy with. So again, it just takes a lot of trial and error, just rushing around this like that. I know I'm doing that a little bit, and you can try multiple brushes just to sort of get more of the effect. So I'm just putting another brush on top of that. You can see it's starting to, just combining brushes sort of takes it a step further and just gives it a little bit of extra. Again, I'm just really going to zoom in and get as much of this detail in as I can. Just clicking and dragging with the brush, just on a really low opacity there, just getting that hair to sort of chip away a little bit, like I said, with a really small brush. It's just a case, again, it's time consuming. There's no way around it. There's no magic AI tool that's going to give us the exact effect that we want. So yeah, so if you can zoom out and just see where you've got to, so got a bit more to go, so we'll just keep putting that in like that. Carrying on deleting areas like that. I mean, once you've sort of got it to the point of where you're happy, so I've worked into this a little bit more, just like this. Let's say I was sort of happy with this. I would work into this a little bit more, but let's say that we were happy with that sort of outline of. So you can see we've got edges around there where we haven't properly brushed it out. But let's say we were happy with that outline that we've got there as a whole. What I'd do then is just swap back to our other brush. So we'll just swap back to one of our big brushes here. So just the soft round one would be okay. And we've got it like that. So at this point, you could put the opacity up a little bit more. You can just start to delete more and more of that brush. So make it a nice big brush. And you can just go back in and just start to brush out some of those big areas of white that we don't need. So just coming in like that, going all the way around. And it doesn't matter too much if you come into the hair like that. As long as you're not taking massive chunks out of it, it will look okay. So you can see that's maybe a little bit too harsh there. So I can just press Control Z, come back a few more times, carry on brushing around it. It's never going to be 100% perfect. Like down there's a little line section that is a bit too crisp, so you can just zoom in, just lightly brush out that line there. Again, there's a little bit of white down there that we don't want, so we'll just come in and block that out like that. That bit's brushed out, yeah, so we've got a little bit there, so we can brush that bit out as well. Just clicking and dragging down there, so we're going to brush that bit out. I mean, that's looking a lot better. So again, I've spent a lot more time on the hair, but just for the sake of showing you how it's done and the bulk of it, that's how you do it. So we've done the hair, we've neatened up that bit. That shoulder bit's okay because we've done that. We'll just double check it in a second, but we want to now just neaten up this little line down here that we've got some of the issue with on the bottom. So one thing to make sure that you do is, and I just need to check that I haven't done this, is if I have done it. Okay, yeah. So one thing to just double check when you're doing a masking is, you see how we've got that green line all the way along there. I've accidentally drawn on top of the image. So if we come up to window here and come up to history, so we want to go back to the part that we were brushing out the whole image of the hair. So it was around, let's go back up, so it's probably around, if I hide that again, okay, we can't go back any further, but that's okay. So what we can do is we can still brush that out again, that's not a problem. But yeah, so what we need to do there is go back to the brush that we had. So at the moment you can see I've got the image selected. So what we should have had this mask selected. So the difference is when you've got it on the actual image, you're actually drawing onto the image. So I was drawing, you can see we've got a green tone down the bottom there. So that means that you're drawing over the original. So what we want to be doing is actually deleting the the image that we had in there. So we want to make sure that this black mask is selected. And you can see it's got more of a white border around it. Whereas I put it on the original, it hasn't. So we want to delete now that green from the image. So it's easy enough to do. So we've got our mask selected. So we're selecting the whole image and we're just going to take out the mask. So again, with the brush, we've just got a low opacity there, which is going to allow us to just block out that image there, like that. Just down there like that. You can see it's just starting to disappear, which is what we want. Again, just gradually taking it all out like that, just so there's no green or whatever color you chose on the artwork. Because that's green, we probably just want to change the color just so we can see. So you can change the color of the background by just double clicking on the color bit there, moving the color to a different color. So just, let's say like that. Clicking the paint bucket icon again, clicking into here, and you can see. So again, I'm clicking onto the layer mask, not the image, and you've still got a little bit green in there, but that's easy enough to delete. So again, we'll probably just use a different brush again. You just neaten up around those edges. So we'll just come to, I think it was the scratches brush, I believe. So we'll just make that a little bit smaller so we can see. So yeah, that's giving us a nicer effect for the hair around those edges, like that. Just delete any color that's there. So, and again, it's not going to be perfect. There's no way that you can get perfect hair. As long as you've got as much of it in there as you can, it's sort of following the. I'll just make the brush a little bit smaller to go around that bit. As long as it's not putting away too much and it's not lost too much of the original hair, it will look okay. So we've got some green in there. So I'm just going in and deleting that, like that. You see, right? So that's that bit done. Yeah. Just zoom out again. So again, you probably need to fine tune it a little bit more around those edges. So we'll just come up to here and we'll just come around that bit and just delete up to 100% because anything over here we want to delete completely. Oops, that's Control Z because we don't want to do that much. When I get to the end of the cutout, I like to just change the background a few times to a darker and a lighter just to see if I've missed any spots. So we'll just put that down to 20. Again, just to give us a nice little edge for the brush. So I'll zoom right back in. So you can see there, it's just giving us a nice little smooth edge with some of that green to come out. And you can see there is some green that we've missed, but we'll gradually just take that out as we're going around anyway. Yeah, that's mostly all of it done, I think. Apart from that green up there, just in that little gap there. But yeah, ideally you wouldn't have made that mistake, but it's just about neatening up as best you can. So now if I just change the background again, so you can keep that one on if you want to, but I'm just going to make a new one. So we'll put like put a darker one in this time. So we'll just put a darker brown or something. Put the dark background in, and you can see I've left quite a bit of the original image in there, so we need to brush that out a little bit more. So again, we'll click back onto our mask there, click our brush again, and we can block out most of that up there because it's not. It's we don't need to worry about making that so neat. So we'll go back to our normal brush, so come to the top and we'll just go soft round brush, and we can change that to like pretty much 100%. Make it a little bit bigger, and you can see as I'm brushing it out, it's getting a lot more area in terms of what it's covering. As you get closer in, I do tend to just drop the opacity down a little bit more, just so it doesn't cut into the image so much. As you can see, I'm just moving around it like edge by edge, just kneading it up where I can. With a really light brush, just to give it a little bit more of a softer edge, like that, and all the way around. Again, just trial and error, just going round step by step. So you can see I'm just deleting that edge there, all the way around. And you can see that that's looking a bit better. So if I zoom out again, that's most of it. Now, because we have lost some of that brush, that hair-like quality that we had before, we can put that back in again. So we can just delete parts of the image that are there currently. So we come back down to scratch brushes. I think that was the one, scratches, yeah. Just make it nice and small. And again, your opacity should be down quite a bit. So see that I just draw, so we drop that even more. So we put it to like 15. I start to just edit out parts of it. You see, getting some more just nicer edges around the side there. So again, just trying to follow the hairline that's in there. So we can just come in like that, make it a little bit smaller. Just maybe block out that bit there, try and follow that hair around there. Take out some of that shape around that side, just to make it not look so uniform. And then we could come around it again with a different brush, just to make it look a bit less uniform again. So we could come around with the, I don't know, that brush there, for example. And just locking in there. Maybe that brush doesn't have the exact effect that we want, but we could do that brush there. So that's sort of starting to chip away at those edges a little bit more, which is what we want. Just clicking and drawing, because you can see it's giving us more of a slashed sort of edge, which is what we want. So just coming back around, so you can change, make the hardness a little bit higher, sorry, the size of it a little bit higher, to give it that, again, that less uniform look. So I'm just coming like that. I think that's looking a lot better. So we've done the hair, we've done that bit. It's that bottom section to go now. So again, I'm just going to change the brush to try and match that edge that we've got. And because it's pretty much to the edge quite well there. So what we can, so we've got all that space to work with. So what we can do is, again, I'm just going to change my brush. So I'm going to come up to the top here, select the soft round brush, and we want to try and match the hardness of that if we can. But it doesn't matter too much because we have got some blur in there. So if we were to go with, like, let's put that to 100%, because we want a harsh, we want quite a see-through, sorry, we want quite a transparent edge. So if we put that to like, sorry, we want to be able to see what we're cutting out quite well. Not like the hair where we want some parts of the brush to be less visible than others. We want our selection here to be really, we want to see as much of it as we can. But it's the hardness that we want to sort of play around with. So if we did that as the starting point, and again, make sure my mask is selected, and I'm just going to draw in like that and just see what difference that makes. And because it's almost there, I press Ctrl Z a couple of times. So if we to go with, like, I don't know, let's say 40 again. I think is what we did on this side. If I scroll across, so we want to try and match that if we can, or which is roughly what this side is here. So maybe a little bit more again. So we could go to, let's go to 50. Just try and draw back that edge. Again, we could go a little bit more if we wanted to. So let's say, why don't we go 65? Just draw that back in and just see what that, I mean, that's pretty much bang on, I would say. So again, I'm zooming in, making the brush really small just to tighten up that line that we've got. So I'm just going to come down like that. So again, just trying to follow the line that we've got. So don't worry if you mess up the line, because we can correct it. So just trying to delete the line that we've got and just follow it all the way down. So we can probably cut in a bit more and just come down that way like that. And we'll just brush out any line that we've got in there. And we can zoom out just to check that we're going in the right direction, which we are, but we can come in a little bit more to get rid of some of that. So what you want to do is just get a bit of a larger brush, zoom out, just try and line up the brush with that. And don't worry about that top bit, so we can come back to that in a second. So yeah, we're just trying to delete that little edge that we've got there. So we're coming across like that, deleting that part, deleting that bit. So yeah, we're just going to come all the way down like that. And again, we can delete any bumps that we've got that we've just made. So that's not a problem. So just trying to delete that little edge that we've got down there. Like that, and just delete any edge that's still remaining there. That's looking pretty good. Again, we're probably just going to just neaten that bit there back up because we've missed the chunk. So if you flip, so once you're on the mask, again, if you flip this round, so we're putting the white to the forefront. So when we've got the black at the start, sorry, in front, that means that we're deleting parts of our mask. But when we flip it round, we've got the white to the front. If I just draw in now, that means what's happening there is that it's putting back in parts of the image that we've just deleted. So you can see I'm just putting back in that part there, trying to neaten up those little edges where I can, like that. Maybe just zoom out again, just see where we're at. That shoulder could do with a little bit of work, just trying to get some curves in there. So I'm just following that line as best I can and just trying to curve it off a little bit, like that. That's looking pretty good, like that. That shoulder looks okay. We could probably neaten up that bit a little bit more. So I'm just going to go and just fill that bit of shoulder in if I can. Let's just see what that curve looks like. Yeah, we want to fill that in a little bit more if we can. So again, I'm just putting in pixels that I've deleted. So I'm coming down there and just fill that back in where I can. That's looking okay, I think. So if I zoom out again, I mean, that looks pretty good now, I'd say. So again, I'm just going to save it again. Now I've got to this point. And what I'm going to do now is, one final time, I'm just going to change the color of this background that we've got. So I've double clicked on the color, and let's just make it like a bright red, for example. And just click the paint bucket icon, smack that back in there. Just to see if there's any areas that we missed. It could be like green color that we accidentally drew over the top where we didn't mean to. So I'm just going to start from down here and just check all the way up. One tool that is good when you're doing these final checks is what's called the navigator. So I come up to window and come all the way down to navigator there. It gives us a view of like where we're looking on the image. So I like to use this rather than keep scrolling all the way around. So this is good to, so let's say we wanted to quickly just view this side of the image, we can just click. I'm just all I'm doing is clicking and dragging on the cursor on the navigator here, and it's taking me to that part of the image. So yeah, we'll start down the bottom. I'm just going to go all along and just double check there's nothing that we missed. I mean, there we've missed a little bit, you can see. So we'll just drag that out of the way. We can collapse that. We'll come back to our mask and we'll select our brush again. And we want to delete parts of this image now, so we need to make sure that the black is at the forefront. You can see as I brush in now that's disappeared. So again, you can either just hold the space bar and go around the image like that, or we can use the scroll bars. I mean, I tend to use this and just click and drag on the image where you want to go. So we're looking around the shoulder. That looks okay. Again, little bits like that you can just neaten up as you're going around. So we'll do that as we're going around. So we want to zoom in a little bit more, drop the brush size, and want to make sure we're deleting areas, so we want to smooth out that bump. So we're deleting that bump now. As you can see, as I'm doing that, it's just giving me a nice smooth finish to it. So that's that bit. So that's cool. So we'll just carry on going up, just double checking. So see there, I'm going to delete that because that shouldn't be there because it's a white block. So just smoothing that out. Again, at that bit, we can probably just drop the opacity of this brush and we'll just go back in, just blur it in a little bit more so there's not such a bright line around there like that. Okay, so that's that bit. So you can zoom out as well, but I tend to keep it fairly zoomed in, so probably block it out of that bit as well a bit more. So that's all looking okay. So we'll carry on going round. That's the hair. So I'm just going to zoom out a little bit more so I can see. Yeah, it's looking okay. So you can see how well it's actually, Control Z, so you can remove that bump. So you can see how well it's actually picked up some of the hair as we go around. If you imagine how long it would take us to draw around each of those individual hair follicles, it would just be ridiculous. So it does do some of the work for you, but there you see we could probably neaten up some of this. So I've just got a lighter brush. I'm just going to brush back out parts of that hair, zoom out again so you can see what you're doing. So we can probably just draw it all the way down, and if we just do that a little bit, that's not quite what we want. But what we can do is go to a different brush again, and let's say we do just try the duster brush, for example, just to see what sort of effect that gives us. That's not quite right because it's a bit too spotty. So we did we could try one of these again, just see what effect. Again, that's given us a nice ununiform sort of look, which is what we want. So just keep brushing in there on a nice low opacity so that we're losing some of those edges again. And again, it's not going to be perfect. There's not a lot you can do. You just have to just try and work into it as best you can. I've done this a little bit roughly, but if I was to spend a full hour on just doing the hair, the tutorial would just be like 3 hours long. So I'm just giving you an idea of what the process would be, so you can see it's starting to look a little bit better. So you're just trying to follow the lines of the way the hair flows, and just trying to make it not look so uniform. So that's looking a little bit better. So just trying to get in there with that brush. and then you might want to go around again and just with a slightly different brush again. So I'm just, that bit there is a bit too blocky for me, so I'm just going in, I'm just deleting all those sections where we can, like that. So there's a bit more white up there that we want to neaten up, but overall that's looking better. And again, we'll just change the brush. So we'll do brushed hair. I'm going to make sure that's a quite low opacity, which it is, and we'll just go back in with a really small brush this time. So you see as I do that, it's again just giving us a non-uniform effect over the top of that, which is what we want. Just try and get rid of some of those edges that we've got in there that look a little bit too brushed in, don't they? So we're just going to brush those out as best we can, like that. Ooh, just go back in here, like that. And again, it's sometimes when you're doing the hair, it can look a little bit too over edited as well. So it's a bit of a balance of both, really. So I'm just going around the edges, just trying to make it not look so edited. It is quite difficult to do. So just going to delete some of that again, because that's a little bit too much white up there. So again, you see how much it changes if I change the brush to like 100% in comparison to that one. So I'm just going to go around here,